0 months to 36 months, the most critical time.
Oh my word. That's really moving.
It is a very confusing feeling to look into the face of an animal that is simultaneously adorable and deadly.
About how we run this place on the principles of degrowth. But essentially, it's how do we live well on this planet without destroying it?
Spies in the military are helping him.
Tonight at 6, a convicted killer who murdered 2 women and their mother is also found guilty of rape. Louise Hunt, seen here in the middle, was raped before she, her sister Hannah and mother Carol were killed with a knife and crossbow. It took a jury less than an hour to convict Kyle Clifford of the rape. His attacks were fueled by violent misogyny, prosecutors said. His victims' relatives, John Hunt, the BBC racing commentator, and his surviving daughter were in court to hear the verdict. Kyle Clifford did not attend. Also on the programme tonight, President Zelensky of Ukraine thanks Europe for its support after the US suspended military and intelligence aid.
We are very thankful that we are not alone, and these are not just words, we feel it.
We speak to the daughter of Captain Sir Tom Moore about the charity she set up in her father's name and the criticism she's faced from the charity's watchdog. And could our own bodies hold the key to finding new antibiotics?
And coming up on...
It took a Crown Court jury less than an hour to unanimously find a former soldier guilty of raping his ex-partner. On the same day he killed her and 2 members of her family. 26-year-old Kyle Clifford had already admitted murdering Carol, Louise and Hannah Hunt, the family of the BBC racing commentator John Hunt, in a knife and crossbow attack last summer. But he had denied raping his former girlfriend Louise. A warning that this report from our special correspondent Lucy Manning contains some distressing details.
A family ripped apart by a man who terrorised and murdered them. Hannah, Louise and Carol Hunt, killed at the hands of what police describe as a cold, calculating murderer. Pictured after his arrest, the triple killer now also guilty of raping Louise Hunt while he'd restrained her for 3 hours.
Do you agree?
This was Clifford in custody in a wheelchair, refusing to answer questions, quietly replying no comment to everything.
Do you accept, Kyle, that based on the evidence, that this is a premeditated murder of 3 people? Do you accept that you have meticulously planned this murder from the moment that you split up the case?
Upset only when questions were about a note he'd written to his family.
I don't want to experience new things. Nothing I can think of can make me happy. I know I could have gone to therapy.
The police found the packaging of the knife and the crossbow that he used to cause so much devastation. An ex-boyfriend whose response to rejection was to rape and murder. We now know he carefully planned his killings. This is Clifford in the black, buying rope, just 2 days after Louise Hunt, who he'd met online, broke up with him. Over a 2-week period, he bought petrol cans, the crossbow, duct tape and the knife. The day before, he watched a video by controversial influencer Andrew Tate. Prosecutors say the violent misogyny fueled him.
Even at the time, it was incomprehensible. A year later, it still feels incomprehensible, the violence that was used and what those 3 women must have faced.
The morning of the murders, he carries on as normal, pushing his niece on a family visit to a garden centre, later driving to the Hunt's home, where he tricked his way in and stabbed Carol Hunt to death. He then waited in the house for Louise to come back in. She was raped, then murdered with the crossbow, and minutes later, when Hannah Hunt arrived home, he shot her too. During the attack, he texted Louise's father, John Hunt, using her phone to ask when he would be home. John replied to say, "Late, is everything okay, sweetness?" Clifford shot himself with the crossbow after police found him and is now paralysed. The level of pre-planning by Clifford to murder Hannah, Louise and Carol Hunt is shocking. But what is sadly unsurprising but no less devastating is yet again innocent women, the victims of male violence in their own homes by someone they knew. No escape from misogyny-fueled violence. Clifford bought the crossbow online, hiding it under a sheet. Questions will be raised about their easy purchase, but this is also about those who choose to use weapons to attack and murder women.
This is barbaric, entirely unprecedented, and a completely unnecessary use of violence simply due to a breakup that he should have handled better.
3 women, Hannah, Louise and Carol Hunt. John Hunt, who sat through the evidence, said previously, "I know my girls are with me at all times." John Hunt and his other daughter Amy were in court to hear the verdicts. Family and friends, when they heard that word guilty, some of them clapped briefly, others said yes, some of them were in tears. The judge praised the Hunt family for their dignity, saying they had had to listen to unspeakable evidence. Clifford subjected them to this trial and he didn't even bother to turn up for it or give any defence. The police said that he was cowardly. He is also a rapist and a triple murderer.
Of Europe believes that Russia is a threat.
UK is saying it all the time. Just listen to what they are doing in the parliament. They are claiming that we are the threat to the UK every other day, if not every day. So I'm sick and tired of that.
And you can see more of Yalda's interview with the Russian ambassador. In fact, you can see the interview in full on The World at 9 p.m. Tonight on Sky News. Ukraine's ambassador to the UK has accused the United States of destroying the rules-based international order by having closer relations with Russia.
The failure to qualify actions of Russia as an aggression is a huge challenge for the entire world and Europe in particular, because we see that it's not just the axis of evil and Russia trying to revise the world order, but the US is finally destroying this order.
Now, Donald Trump's special envoy has been talking about where next for talks on Ukraine in the last few moments, so let's just have a listen to what he had to say.
Well, President Zelensky sent a letter to the president. I think the president thought that it was a really good, positive first step. And from that, we're now in discussions to coordinate a meeting with the Ukrainians in Riyadh or even potentially Jeddah. So the city's moving around a little bit, but it will be Saudi Arabia. And I think the idea is to get down a framework for a peace agreement and an initial ceasefire as well.
Steve Holland.
Okay. Direct discussions with Hamas. Well, Eden Alexander is very important to us, as all the hostages are, but Eden Alexander is an American, and he's injured. And so he's a top priority for us. And Adam Bowler is, as you know, the special envoy in charge of hostages, and he's had conversations. We feel that Hamas has not been forthright with us, and it's time for them to be forthright with us. And
talking, a very important man is becoming a very important man in the Trump administration, talking at the end there about Hamas. And the interesting thing there is that the Americans have been talking in the last few days directly to Hamas at a time when the ceasefire in Gaza is incredibly fragile. So that is a separate issue, clearly, but an important one. But on Ukraine, he said that talks were being coordinated, or they were trying to coordinate talks between the US and Ukrainian officials, and that those talks would most likely take place in either Jeddah or Riyadh in Saudi Arabia. So the Americans talked with the Russians in Saudi Arabia. It looks like they are now going to talk with the Ukrainians separately in Saudi Arabia as well, but that's not yet confirmed. deal for a British company to provide attack drones to Ukraine. The Prime Minister says he wants American support to bolster Ukraine and Europe's defences in the event of a peace deal. Our political correspondent Nick Martin asked Sir Keir Starmer if Donald Trump was right to pause military help for Ukraine.
I was with President Trump last week, and I'm clear in my mind that he does want lasting peace in Ukraine, and that's really important. That's what I want. That's what Ukraine wants, and therefore we need to work towards that. I believe that means we do need to put Ukraine in the strongest possible position, so that Ukraine can fight on if necessary, or be in a strong position in relation to negotiations.
But put Ukraine in a good position.
Well,
is it right for him to do that?
We have to make sure the US, Ukraine and Europe are all on the same page to put Ukraine on the strongest possible position. But beyond that, what matters is lasting peace. For that to happen, it's very important that we don't make what I think we have a false choice, which is between, on the one hand, working with the United States, and on the other hand, working with Europe. We've enjoyed peace for 80 years, and that's been incredibly important to Britain, because the safety and security of the British public is my number one duty. We've done that by working with the US. No two countries work as closely as we do on defence and security and intelligence, but also by working with our European partners. And that's why I'm resisting those who are saying, look, I know Churchill didn't make the choice, Attlee didn't make the choice, but they're now urging me to make the choice between the US and Europe. Wrong choice, in my view. We've preserved the peace for 80 years by working with both the US and Europe, and now is not the time to break that.
And I appreciate, Prime Minister, that this is extremely complex. We've seen how complex it is over the last week or so, but presumably you would have preferred Donald Trump not to have pause in military aid to Ukraine, because it's a lot easier if he was on side.
Well, look, my strong view is that we need to put Ukraine in the strongest possible position. I've been arguing that for many, many months before the change in transition in the US of the administration. So that's my strong view. But what I think is really important now is that we continue our work, I continue my work, to get the US, Ukraine and European allies onto the same page, so that we can all focus on what matters most, which is lasting peace in Ukraine. That will only happen if, one, there is a deal, and two, that deal is defended, because Putin has a track record of breaching deals, which is why we need a guarantee in behind the deal. That guarantee needs a European element, and of course the United Kingdom will step up. We always step up in the cause of peace, but we also need the US to be working with us on that, and that is what I'm focusing all my attention on.
Some meetings are going on. We've meetings in Brussels, which we'll get to in a moment. But this is the Pentagon in the United States, and it is there that the U.S. Defense Secretary, the new U.S. Defense Secretary, will be welcoming the British Defense Secretary, John Healey, and they have plenty to talk about, because Pete Hegseth has made. He hasn't been shy in saying that Ukraine is essentially a European problem, and that has led to all sorts of talks about security guarantees, who provides those security guarantees, and that will be what they will be talking about in the coming hour or so. We will come back to the Pentagon when John Healey arrives. There's been an emergency defense summit, and it's been taking place in light of America's tough stance on Ukraine. The president of the European Commission, Ursula von der Leyen, says Europe is facing a watershed moment. Volodymyr Zelensky said he was glad he was not alone as he joined other European leaders at that summit. The meeting follows America's decision to cut military aid and intelligence to Kyiv following last week's dramatic exchanges in the White House between President Zelensky and Trump.
This is a watershed moment for Europe. And Ukraine is part of our European family. It's also a watershed moment for Ukraine. Europe faces a clear and present danger, and therefore Europe has to be able to protect itself, to defend itself, as we have to put Ukraine in a position to protect itself and to push for a lasting and just peace. We want a peace through strength. And this is the reason why I present today to the leaders the Rearm Europe plan.
During all this period and last week, you stay with us, and of course from all the Ukrainians, from all our nations, big appreciation. We are very thankful that we are not alone, and these are not just words, we feel it. It's very important. You made a strong signal to Ukrainian people, to Ukrainian warriors, to civilians, to all our families, and it's great that we are not alone. We feel it and we know it. Thank you so much for everything.
May negotiated when he was in government and everything. This is what tie would you like me to wear, President Trump? What would you like to say? What is going to be the outcome of this meeting? Why are we even having this meeting? Why don't you just tell me what you want and I'll go away and try and do it? Which is the Starmer position, actually. To be honest, actually, we've now got to the position where nobody in the world seems to be able to do anything without getting the God bless you from Trump. I object to that. I object to the humiliation of Zelensky, and I object to the fact, a little humiliation for even Starmer. Starmer's done all right out of it, right? But he was prepared to take it because he recognises we had no power in the argument. But do I think this is a reasonable way to conduct it? No, I don't. And we've got 4 years of this. 4 years. I'd be very worried if I were Nigel Farage.
It is a massively unreasonable way to conduct international relations. And I tell you what, my last job in government was Minister of State for the Armed Forces, and a big element of that was liaising with bereaved families. And when I heard J.D. Vance disparaging our troops and saying we've not taken part in a war for 30 or 40 years, that stinks.
We discussed that actually on the day, didn't we, J.D. Vance's comments, and there was quite a divided reaction to it among the audience at home. There was a real strength of feeling what you've just said. There were so many people, there were veterans as well getting in touch saying that they really did feel insulted. They really felt insulted. There were people that were telling me that they suffered with PTSD, Gulf syndrome, you name it. They knew people that had been maimed, and they were really offended by his comments. The other side of it were people saying, is this really what we're going to have now for the next 4 years? Every single word that someone says in perhaps a throwaway manner or whatever is going to be analysed, dissected. People are going to be offended about it. Is that the style of diplomacy that we're going to have for 4 years?
In diplomacy, and I was a Foreign Office Minister for 3 years, your words are dissected. They are analysed. That's why you choose them carefully. There was no choosing carefully from these two. Trump, who dodged the draft and avoided Vietnam, and Vance, who was a photographer in the army.
Interesting stuff. And after the break as well, I also want to look at what has all this been doing to popularity of people like Keir Starmer, Nigel Farage, and so on. And I also want to talk to you as well about Donald Trump's plans, some of the ideas that he's had about Ukrainian refugees and what should happen to them in America. Also, someone joining the conversation after the break that's slightly, how shall I word it, slightly more pro-Trump. I'll see you in 2.
Hello, Tom. Thank you very much for joining. I've just been singing Live and Let Die to myself for some random reason. So, what's going on here then? Is Bond going to be changed forever? I mean, Barbara Broccoli was pretty hands-on and tough with what happened to that.
Yeah, you've got to think that this goes back to 1962 when it all started with Sean Connery and Dr. No. Her father, Cubby Broccoli, got the film rights and began the franchise and the movie character we all know as James Bond. So it's a big change. It was always going to come to an end eventually. Barbara took over pretty much when her father died, before GoldenEye, when Pierce Brosnan was the new Bond. But she's really had all the control with her half-brother, Michael G. Wilson, who's the other producer on Eon, since then, since 95 really. And they didn't cast Pierce Brosnan themselves, that was Cubby's casting. Their real casting was Daniel Craig. And I think now that chapter has come to an end, and whether you liked it or not, it had a very definite ending. Maybe that's been part of the reason where they think they'd rather spend their time in retirement doing something else. It's time to pass it on, and they've got a ready-made partner already in Amazon.
Is it going to get a little bit woke, though, Tom?
I've no idea, but all I know is that Jeff Bezos obviously is head of Amazon. He's already put a tweet up on X saying, who do you want as the new James Bond?
Oh, okay.
So he's already including the fans, which I suppose is a good thing. Whether or not will have a say. We don't know. But I think what it'll be is what people want, what people on the outside see as James Bond. Not necessarily super fans like me.
I'm Michelle Dewberry. This is Jubes and Kerr, and we're with you until 7 o'clock tonight. Alongside me, I've got my panel, Kelvin McKenzie and Bill Rammell. Lots of you getting in touch. My simple question to you, I'm going to ask you a simple question on this one about the situation with Trump and Ukraine. Do you think we're closer to peace in this situation or further away now that Donald Trump has started kind of getting involved and shaking things up? Get in touch with me all the usual ways and tell me. But now, let me cross live to Republican commentator and columnist Lee Cohen. Good evening to you, Lee. Let me put that question directly to you. Do you think we're closer to peace now that Donald Trump is involved in this way?
Many thanks for having me, Michelle. It's great to be with you. Let's be absolutely clear. President Trump's, the leverage that President Trump brings, he holds all the cards. And yes, indeed, I think we are closer to peace. There have been recent reports by Reuters and others that indicate that senior Trump officials have signaled that the Trump administration is planning to revoke the temporary legal status of 240,000 Ukrainians who fled to the U.S. during the conflict with Russia. This planning actually predates the Zelensky-Trump White House clash, but that's leverage too. In fact, I have a column on GB News as we speak saying that Trump's given the playbook to Western leaders everywhere. Secure your borders, revive your economy, defy the global elite. I mean, he is really singing giving, as I say, the playbook. And the leverage that Trump commands and the cards that he holds mean that we are closer to peace.
Well, the Ukrainian ambassador to the UK says that Donald Trump is actually destroying the world order.
Well, I can certainly understand from the ambassador's perspective that may be the case. Trump is changing the world order. There's no question about it. The rules-based world order, the post-World War II rules-based world order is probably a thing of the past. Donald Trump understands things from a business perspective, from a power perspective, and from a financial resources perspective. And that's really a realistic approach, and that's why he holds the leverage.
But do you think, I mean, because what we're having conversations about here in Europe now is actually, is it time for us to accept that this special relationship that many people thought we actually had is no longer a thing? We've just got to essentially kind of row our own boat, so to speak.
Hardly. The special relationship is even more important than ever. As you know, Trump is a great proponent of the special relationship. He has deep affection for the United Kingdom, for his own ancestral ties, for the monarchy. He understands the trading potential. He was absolutely behind the spirit of Brexit, the spirit of sovereignty, and about the UK being a very important independent partner for the United States, and the UK assuming an important global place in the world, Michelle.
Interesting stuff. Many people, I can see people on my panel even shaking their heads at some of the things that you are saying. I can tell you this, Donald Trump is certainly a divisive character. We've got to strap ourselves in because I don't see this ending any time soon. But for now, Republican commentator and columnist Lee Cohen, thank you for your time.
Say that in Greenland or Canada.
Well, yeah, obviously Donald Trump is very stern, isn't he, with his thoughts about Greenland. He wants it. Now, just so you can see on your screen, it's as I explained to you earlier on. Maybe we could just listen in, perhaps. This is the Pentagon now. We've got the Defense Secretary, John Healey, arriving to meet his counterpart as well. I mean, look at this pomp and ceremony. I mean, it is really quite something, isn't it?
Well, it is, and you know, it's an important relationship. I mean, look, you know, made it clear I think Trump is a monster, but he leads the global superpower, and we've got to negotiate, and we've got to work with him and get the best out of it. But, you know, when I hear from the guy from Republicans overseas, leverage, what he actually means is bullying. And, you know, the whole of my adult political life, we've had a consensus in the West, and it was actually led by Reagan and Thatcher, that the then Soviet Union and now Russia was an existential threat to us, and we stood collectively up against Russia. That's been thrown out of the window with Trump, and I think it's deeply dangerous.
Well, there you go. Deeply dangerous. Do you share that sentiment? Coming up after the break, we've got lots that we need to discuss. Accusations of two-tiered justice when it comes to sentencing in this country. Let's explore that.
Ready to soak up that holiday sunshine?
Won't we need some cover?
No worries. All sorted.
All Clear Travel Insurance sponsors GB News Travel Destinations Forecast.
It's an unsettled story across some parts of Western Europe as we go through the next couple of days. There's the risk of some heavy, thundery rain bringing some flooding. There's a system pushing into Portugal, Western Spain, and that's bringing some intense rain. Also, some heavy rain already affecting eastern parts of Spain, so further totals building up, causing more issues. More unsettled weather across parts of the Mediterranean, though further east towards Greece it's looking largely dry. Then quite a mixed bag when we head through the weekend.
All Clear Travel Insurance sponsors GB News Travel Destinations.